Yeah, so this is part 2 of the chat with Phil Harte, and that's one of his magazines there, 10-year edition, and that looks like a casting shot for a Cougar Bourbon ad. He's rocking. Great guy, very, very creative and inspiring, and a lot of the ideas go towards charity, which is just awesome. As you can see, Celine Dion and George Gregan, The Shark. Everyone getting behind a project called Project 88. They've built a house, and they're probably going to make $2 million for charity, so he's a legend. Here's part 2.
Looking back on some of the things you've done, I mean, I look through your magazine and see all these photos from years gone by, crazy events, Celine Dion, Greg Norman. What's your favourite memory, if you've got one, that's taking you around the world? Classic?
Yeah, we have, mate. Greg Norman is probably, I've known Greg for years, and I ran Greg for Qantas for 10 years for 2 days. Every year for 2 days for 10 years. And Greg is one of those unbelievably inspirational guys. The media beat him up as being this bloke that tells them all to piss off, and I get really irritated when they talk about choking and all those types of things. And I sat Greg down and we had a chat just like this, and I said, mate, how good would you have been if you only played golf? And he said, well, gee, I don't know. He said, I'd never thought of that. Mm-hmm. And you get guys like Tiger Woods, that's all he does, is plays golf, because he's got such a huge machine behind him that does all of his corporate nonsense, whereas Greg drives this massive organisation. He grows his own grass, G1 and G2, that actually goes on the fairways of all of his golf courses. He designs golf courses, he designs boats. Greg has got this huge infrastructure of corporate behind him, but he runs it. And the guy is a machine, and he was the #1 golfer. He's been #1 longer than anybody in the history of golf, and people don't seem to realise that. He held that #1 mantle for so long. Yeah, he is a legend, and he's one of our greatest ever sports people, but the media keeps saying, looking at it's a tall poppy nonsense.
Yeah, we're Australia, that's what we do.
We're Australians, and we should be bloody ashamed of ourselves. And I tell them, pull your head in. Yeah. We should embrace our success stories. Celine Dion was just fantastic. I ran into Celine purely because I went over to Vegas. I had a meeting over there, and we were setting up an international golf series. And I turned up in Vegas, stayed at Caesars Palace, and realised that one of our sponsors here in Australia was Sony BMG. And a mate of mine, the marketing director, was Craig Green. And I thought, look, I've got to get a hook to go in with our Las Vegas Classic World Cup golf, and what better hook than bloody Celine Dion, because I knew Celine was a mad golfer. She loves a golf, she plays off 10, and so I'm in Caesars Palace, I've just booked in, I'm there for 2 nights, so I've rung Greenie up in Sydney. I said, mate, you have to get me a meeting with Celine's manager. He says, mate, what are you talking about? He said, it's 11 o'clock. I said, yeah, I'm here for 2 days. Get me in to see somebody. So he said, I'll call you back. So he sent an email off to Celine's manager, and he's ended up. So he came and saw me based upon the reference that was given. You have to meet Phil Harte. Great guy. Does his stuff in Australia. Does charity stuff. Yada yada. So we have a cup of coffee, and we ended up sitting there. I thought it was going to be about 15 minutes, and we ended up sitting there for an hour and a half, and that was like at 6 o'clock till about 7:30. The show started at 8. He walks out, jumps on the phone, calls Celine's husband up, Renee, and says, look, is Celine finished her interview with some German TV station? And he said, yep. He said, I got someone to meet. So he said, mate, come on, we'll go backstage and meet Celine. Well, I'm trying to be really cool about it, and I'm just saying, how good is this, right? So we just got up, walked underneath the Colosseum, and went down, and they've actually rebuilt Celine's home underneath the Colosseum where she performs. They've replicated her home at Lake Las Vegas. So when she comes in, everything's the same. Yeah. So we've walked in there, and we had a couple of drinks and some antipasta before she was going on, and just a wonderful person. Yeah. And it was there that she agreed that each year for the next 4 years that I could auction an experience to take 2 people from Australia into Caesars Palace and to go backstage, meet her, and sit front row of her show, A New Day. Wow. And so we auctioned it. We used to get 50 grand every year at part of our auction. And meeting her was great. The second year I went back there, I thought, what am I going to buy her? Like, what do you buy Celine Dion as a thank you gift? Yeah. And my wife, Danielle, we did a photo shoot for the cover of our magazine, and I made Danielle do it nude. And it was just the most provocative, sexy, classy cover we've ever done. And she was all covered up, of course. It was black and white. She had a golf glove on, and I got Tiffany & Co. to give me a $3,000 solid silver putter. And that's all that Danielle had in front of her. Right. And the cover story was about women in sport. Right. And and I had this shoved away at home, this Tiffany & Co. putter in a beautiful blue Tiffany box, and I thought, I've got the present. because every woman loves a blue box.
Oh, yeah.
So I carried this bloody Tiffany box on the plane all the way, and Celine and I were backstage, and I had a couple of people that had bought the auction item, and I said, Celine, you're killing me. She says, oh, what do you mean? I said, can you imagine buying you a present? And she sort of laughed, and she said, you idiot. You know, why would you buy me a present? Or what could you buy me? And I said, how's your golf going? And she says, oh, I played today and I had a terrible round. You know, I'm only 10, but, you know, I had shocking, a bogey this and bogey that. And I said, well, I'm going to fix your putting. And I gave her this Tiffany & Co. putter. And she just absolutely loved it. And she was dancing around the room, singing as if it was a microphone.
Wow.
So we took a photograph of it, and that became the cover of our next magazine.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's all those spontaneous sorts of things that we do.
Yeah, but they're created, right? Self-created.
They are.
Yeah.
And you just sort of grab them at the moment.
Yeah.
And then you sort of walk away and say, well, gee, that really works, so let's do this and this. And but you're always looking for different things, different sorts of value-add things that you can...
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, like, to wrap up, like, advice you'd have for someone. You gave a lot during it, but, like, you know, overall, things you'd learnt, you'd say to yourself 20 years ago, so there's something you'd pass on?
Yeah, be more tolerant. You know, like, I was this 25-year-old, rude, obnoxious prick. You know, and you know, I was, you know, and I can say that, you know, knowing that as you grow up, you try to get a little bit more humble. You know, you try to listen rather than, you know, than wail out all this nonsense. And I never believed for my own nonsense, subject to what people might think. I always listen to my guys. Before I go and do anything, I always chat to my crew, chat to my wife, chat to people that I respect their opinions. And if, you know, if there's anything that you can say to someone, you know, is, you know, try to listen to people, get as much information as you can. Don't just rush out and do things, and be a bit more tolerant of people. And that's what I try to be. And, you know, I've got a little girl and a little boy now, and they've made me a lot more tolerant and listen a hell of a lot more to what is going on around me, rather than just going out and being bombastic and just charging down. It's great to be full of beans, and don't not be full of beans. You know, go out there and just kick everything as hard as you can in the backside, but make sure you listen.
Yeah, all right, well, great to meet you again. You're inspiring, so rock on.
Good on you. Well done, mate. Thanks a lot.
Take me back to the sweet time.